recording. Great. Okay, so for chapter 5 to 6 in this course, we're going to be facing, or excuse me, we're going to be looking at a few things that might cause. Oh, thank you. A few things that might cause some obstacles in the SEO. But the main one is that I want to look at is sitemaps, because sitemaps are a way that we can control how we lay out our website to both the robots using the XML and then the people using the HTML. So I don't want to, sorry, I don't want to throw a ton at you guys still. But for instance, the main thing that I want to show off is sitemaps and how we can build them up. And I don't have an account for the things logged in, but I'll make one after the lecture and show off how to use it. The reason I want to show off sitemaps so much is that we are in our capstone project part 2. You're making sitemaps, and I want to show off ways that we can use that. Great. So today we're going to be going on about some obstacles in SEO that can actually hurt your overall page because, and again, SEO is a very broad term. There's lots of elements that go into it, but there's also a lot of smaller elements that affect the SEO and stuff too. So we're going to have to take into consideration such stuff as like irrelevant content or slow page load times, and then try to fix it from there. We're also going to try to figure out how to make sitemaps and then what the sitemaps use for us to benefit us, and then tools out there to create them as well. So with some obstacles in SEO, let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. Okay, sorry. Some obstacles in SEO, as we saw earlier, was the black hat SEO, which was where we kind of tricked the search engine into making our stuff pop up earlier than normal because we used techniques that pushed our page up to the top. And again, these techniques will be stuff like cloaking and link farming, and I believe we go through each of them. Yeah. So cloaking again is a way that you kind of hide what is presented. And to remind us of it, let me go ahead. Let me pull up a small example here for us. And I'll keep this up. So with link cloaking, again, an example of this is that you are trying to point to a website or you have a link that's there that is actually pointed to somewhere else. So what that means is you might have, we looked at this before with the medicine thing, but you might have a link that has the title of free medicine here, and if you click on it, it will take it to someone else's blog. So that's the way that you cloak what you're actually doing, as the search engine will rank your title higher, but it might not be actually related to the rank. Link farming is the way that we send out all the links to a bunch of different places. Search engines rank sites based on popularity and the inbound links to the website. So if you get like hundreds or even 1,000 websites pointing to you that are fake or that you set up incorrectly, that isn't naturally pointing to you, you will rank higher. But it's black hat SEO because you are like underhanding, or sorry, you're kind of cheating because you're creating fake links and linking them to your site. Remember, key point is to not use irrelevant content. Make sure that content you're using is pretty up to date. Don't try to duplicate your stuff, and ensure that the content you're using is never too stale. Make sure that you always target the right audience. Excuse me. And again, this can change based on, per basis. Like you might have audience that is more focused on stuff that or excuse me, you might have a more broad audience, but making sure that you have a target audience and being able to work towards them is very important. Cool. And then here's a really important one. Don't try to copy competition. Even if you're a smaller business, large businesses don't have the practices that large businesses do wouldn't apply to you, as they just have more resources and time. So make sure that you try to focus on your own at the start and don't try to copy what others are doing. And then, of course, we took an entire course on social media, so make sure that we don't overlook it. Ensure that it's built into what you're using. Whatever websites you have, make sure you have a Twitter or a LinkedIn or anything set up, just to make sure that you are reaching more people. Cool. And then the UX, which is the user interface stuff, that means that we just need to make sure our website isn't too flashy and make sure that it's easy for people to navigate. And then, of course, we're going to dive into these, but make sure that we have sitemaps, both XML and HTML, as they have different purposes, but they're both useful for a website. I think this one's pretty straightforward, but if you have a lot of content and you don't have your code optimized or anything like that, your load time on your page might be longer. So make sure that your load time is a bit reduced to make sure that it loads fast and that you have a faster website. Now, this is just a very small aside. See here. With Flash on your website, Flash is actually being, or excuse me, deprecated. It's not going to be used anymore because of the fact that it could be hacked pretty easily. So what they're going to start using now is JavaScript to help with the dynamic and highly intuitive websites. And what that means, but the only bad thing about this is that search engines can't go through JavaScript effectively, so it might still be low. And now, excuse me, you might be wondering, okay, well, what's the really big purpose of Flash and JavaScript? Those are just ways that you can build up your site with a bit more like pizzazz on them. You can add some effects to your site easier, but because they are prone to attacks or anything, they also might have some issues presented on your SEO. So you might have a website that's perfect, but you try to add in some JavaScript to it and it slows it down. That's kind of the aspect of JavaScript code. So you want to make sure that whatever website you're trying to build up, that you don't go like crazy with some aspects of it. Make sure that you keep it a bit simple. AMP is a Google project that helps bring out mobile pages on the web, and essentially it's a way to make sure that mobile design for websites is still effective. And I'll link that to us right now. Let's see here. Great. So I have a few sitemaps here. And I went through these slides pretty quickly. Does anyone have any questions on these? Essentially, let me go back to the start here with these. What I wanted to get off for the obstacles in the SEO is know that there's a lot of different ways that you might get hacked, or there might be some content laid out. There's a lot of different scenarios that can harm your website. So just making sure that you have these under control is already good enough. Make sure that you don't use black hat SEO. Ensure your content is updated and is consistent. And then make sure that whatever website you build up, it's optimized and properly created. Great. So we're going to talk a bit about sitemaps here. And then the overall purpose of a sitemap is to try and display how a website is organized with their navigation and labeling aspects. Sitemap is a way that we can provide relationships between web pages and the components of it, and then it also tells the search engine what is in our page. So if we remember here, if we go ahead and open up the sitemap, we'll remember that we have kind of build out of how our page should be organized. As you can see here, this sitemap is like massive, but you can actually build out an entire sitemap using some of these tools that we're going to talk about later. And it's very helpful to help figure out where you want to put pages and how they're organized. Um, this is another difference here between XML and HTML, but I just want to reiterate that XML is kind of what the code uses to look through stuff, and then the other one, the HTML, is what the user uses to navigate. So again, a sitemap is just a way that you can go ahead and lay out your website in a proper way. I already talked a bit about this, excuse me, but again, the XML sitemap, it's a machine readable list of pages, so essentially it's the crawler or the robots that are going to be able to read it, and then it goes ahead and and it puts in the indexes for SEO. Some of the information XML sitemap might have is stuff like the updates, relevance, alterations, and related data. And if we look at the actual code here, we'll see that we get the location of the URL, and this is an XML sitemap, so this is one page on the XML sitemap. We get the last updated day it was modified. We get the frequency that this page is changed, and then we get the priority of this page. The HTML sitemap is a way that we can tailor pages and stuff to be used by users themselves, and it helps them locate different pages. And it also streamlines the user experience by making users a bit more familiar with your website. So for instance, the HTML sitemap will be laid out like this, where you can go to the home page, the About Us and Services, and then go from there to keep navigating through the overall website. Excuse me. Cool. A sitemap. There's different ways that you could actually just use a pen and paper to draw out a sitemap. And we're also for our capstone part 2 going to be brainstorming how to create a sitemap. So I want to talk about that in a bit. But there's actually a few tools here that are very helpful with creating a sitemap as well. So if I can go ahead and I'll go through each of these in depth here. MindNode is another one, MindNode is a type of tool that is used for Apple devices. And essentially, what happens is that you can go ahead and build your sitemap and then plan projects in an appealing way. But the only drawback is that it's exported in XML, so it's exported in the language that the robot uses. And if we go ahead and open it up here, they have a pretty cool thing here where we just see what is going to happen. We can see that we get a travel route for each of these, and then from there, see, you can just kind of go ahead and build this out. So you can build with Tasker stuff as well. You can go ahead and create a sitemap that's pretty intuitive and looks pretty nice, and then from there you can keep going. Excuse me. But in general, MindNode's a very helpful tool, but the only constraint, as it said, is that it's exporting XML. Rightmaps is another utility for sitemap generation. It helps you create sitemaps with as well as customizable colors, and then map page content. Excuse me. It helps you create excuse me. It helps you create content for your sitemap, and then the map page content is essentially stuff that you can write into the page. So what that means is you can go ahead and create a website type of page on here using content, and then go ahead and see it built into a sitemap. Now, I wonder if they have an image. Okay. So I might need to log into one of these really quick, just for free trial to show it off. But as you can see from here, this is just a way that you can go ahead and build up pages. As you see, we have a home page on the left. Then we have a news page that's a subpage of home. And then we have 3 different news articles that are subpages of the news. And then we also have the other ones here, like radio, podcast, topics, and Pacific. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this website that's really cool. But essentially, what this all is a way to build up your sitemap and help build content for your website. So that's Rightmaps, and then DynoMapper is another one that you can use for creating sitemaps. I'm wondering, we might be able to see it in the background. Yep. So it's kind of hard to see, but we can see that this image is zooming out, and we're just building down our website with pages and seeing where they're connected to. So as you can see here, you can connect a page to a main guy and then also to another page, and then just keep going down like that. DynoMapper is very helpful, and I'll need to try to log into one of these to make sure that we can see everything it can do. But essentially, you can create content and then go ahead and add stuff to that page too. The cool thing about DynoMapper is that it has features for Google Analytics, and it is able to have some testing for website accessibility and keyword tracking. So DynoMapper, MindNode, and MindNode, Rightmaps, and DynoMapper. These 3 tools are on the quiz that we'll go over to review later on, but these are really helpful tools essentially to help us out with a lot of aspects in our sitemap creation, and using them will be very beneficial for your website creation and capstone project too. Great. So